Welcome to this edition of the Carosity Carecast. I am your host, Jeremy Watkins. In this episode, I'd like to talk about the mental health of the aging and elderly population. I'd like to discuss the importance of it, what are some risk factors, and how we can better promote good mental health in the aging and elderly population. So the world's population is aging extremely fast. There was a study done by the World Health Organization in 2020, and it found that 1 billion people in the world were aged 60 years or over in 2020. That figure is predicted to rise to 1.4 billion by 2030, representing 1 in 6 people globally. By 2050, the number of people aged 60 years and over will have doubled to reach 2.1 billion. The number of persons aged 80 years or older is expected to triple between 2020 and 2050 to reach 426 million. Now, I know that it is difficult to understand these huge numbers, but I want you to take one thing from that study, and that is that our aging and elderly population is ever growing. And with that will be an even greater need for informed and educated caregivers. Many aged and elderly are at risk for developing mental health conditions, and the most common is depression and anxiety disorders. Around 14% of adults aged 60 and over live with mental disorders. The most common, as I just said, is depression and anxiety. Around a quarter of deaths from suicide, about 27.2%, are among people aged 60 or over. Mental health conditions among older people are often under-recognized and undertreated, and the stigma surrounding these conditions can make people reluctant to even seek help. At older ages, mental health is shaped not only by physical and social environments, but also by the cumulative impacts of earlier life experiences and specific stressors related to aging. Exposure to adversity, significant loss in intrinsic capacity, and a decline in functional ability can all result in psychological distress. Older adults are more likely to experience adverse events such as bereavement, or a drop in income or reduced sense of purpose with retirement. Despite their many contributions to society, many older adults are subject to ageism, which can seriously affect people's mental health. Social isolation and loneliness, which affect about a quarter of older people, are key risk factors for mental health conditions in later life. So too is abuse of elderly people, which includes any kind of physical, verbal, psychological, sexual, or financial abuse, as well as neglect. 1 in 6 older adults experience abuse, and often by their own carers. Abuse of older adults has serious consequences and can lead to depression and anxiety. Some older adults are at greater risk for depression and anxiety because of dire living conditions, poor physical health, or lack of access to quality support and services. So everything I just talked about came directly from the World Health Organization website. And I've been really focused on the mental health of the aging and elderly because I feel, and I've noticed, and in my experience, I can see the decline in the mental health of the elderly people that I care for. And so I took a dive into researching more about mental health and the aging. And honestly, it's really no different than mental health in anyone. But I want to really turn our attention to the mental health of the aging and elderly, because that's what it's really all about. That's what we are here for as caregivers. That's what my company exists for, is to ensure quality of life. And with quality of life is mental health of the people that I care for. So I'd like to talk about some other things that are pointed out on the World Health Organization website. And it goes on to talk about promotion and prevention, treatment and care. And it says that mental health promotion and prevention strategies for older adults focus on supporting healthy aging. That means creating physical and social environments that support well-being and enable people to do what is important to them despite losses in capacity. And if that is not a mission statement for my company and any other home care company, then if that's not your mission in life, then please get out of this business. In a nutshell, that is exactly what we strive to do: to create physical and social environments that support well-being and enable people to do what is important to them despite losses in capacity. So, two main things there is support and enable. And I would go so far as to say three important points there, where it says creating physical and social environments. So create, support, and enable. Three main factors of a caregiver should be to create, support, and enable those that they care for. Social support for adults is extremely important. Social support for older adults is extremely important. Can you imagine a life where you're just secluded in a room with no other people around, no one coming by to say hi, you can't leave the house, you have disabilities, you can't drive, maybe you have a window? Can you imagine what that would do to your mental health? Social connection is particularly important to reduce risk factors such as social isolation and loneliness. At this stage of life, meaningful social activities can significantly improve positive mental health, life satisfaction, and quality of life. They can also reduce depressive symptoms. This is directly from the World Health Organization website. And in my research doing this, it's basic, yet so important. And you need to educate yourself on how to properly manage the care you provide to make sure that you are creating, supporting, and enabling the people you care for. It goes on to talk about some other things, and it says protection from ageism and abuse is also critical. What is ageism? That is discrimination due to your age. And abuse. I did an entire podcast episode on elderly abuse, and I even posted elderly abuse resources on our Carosity website. Because I feel so strongly that people need to be educated on what abuse is, the different types of abuse, and how to prevent them. And some people could possibly even be abusing the one they care for and not even realize it. So that's why education is so important, and that is exactly why I do what I do. That's why I make these podcasts. That's why I write the blogs. That's why I put the resources on my website to educate and inform. Because that is the only way that we are going to transform the home care industry into what it truly needs to be. And that is providing informed, educated, experienced, and compassionate caregivers. It's extremely important. And in the beginning of this episode, I read you the statistics about how the aging and elderly population is just going to increase as time goes on, which means an even more need for caregivers, an even more need for well-educated, experienced, and compassionate caregivers. So I want to add protect to that list of promotion and prevention. So we have create, support, enable, and protect. We need to protect them from others that could possibly harm and abuse them. We also need to recognize that we may even need to protect them from ourselves. For example, let's say you're going through a divorce and you come into work and you're caring for an individual and your mind is just not there. You know, you are severely hurt. You're hurting. You're depressed. Maybe you have some anxiety. Your thoughts are focused on literally almost nothing. And so going into care for a person that way can cause you to neglect their needs because you're not focused on them while you're there. And it could be possible to even verbally abuse the one you care for if you're in a mental situation like I just described. You know, you could be short-tempered. They could be calling for you and needing something, and maybe you lash out and say something you shouldn't have. See, this is what I mean. You have to know and become educated so you can protect. So treatment and care for the mental health conditions of the elderly and aging, the number one thing is to promptly recognize the symptoms of mental health decline. You know, as caregivers, we are kind of trained and we kind of learn, you know, the physical signs of, you know, aging decline. You know, signs of someone not being able to walk or losing the ability to walk or losing the ability to swallow food properly. And these are all things that come with age. And as caregivers, we learn to recognize these symptoms of aging. But I dare say that very few caregivers know the signs and symptoms of mental health decline. So what are some signs of mental health decline? Well, they could be obvious. They could be not so obvious. The more obvious ones is maybe the one you care for isn't as interested in things that used to interest them. That could be a sign of depression. Maybe they are starting to become overprotective of something or someone. Maybe they're becoming overprotective of themselves. That could be a sign of anxiety. That could also be a sign of abuse, which causes anxiety and depression. Everything is linked, and you have to learn to keep your eyes open. It's all part of caring for people. When you care, you pay attention. And you recognize when something is wrong. So some things I want you to take away from this is to create environments that support well-being for the one you care for. And by supporting them, that means supporting their mental well-being, their physical well-being. Create an environment where dignity for them is important. Their dignity, their mental health, their physical health, even though they are aging and their bodies are declining and their minds are declining, does not mean that they have to lose dignity or the ability to do things that are important to them, despite the loss in capacity. So create, support, enable, and protect. These are 4 things that we can do to promote and prevent mental health decline. We can promote good mental health and prevent mental health decline. Now, sometimes it may seem impossible. You may do everything that we talked about and maybe more. But you need to know as a caregiver that you are not the sole person who should be caring for that person. There are professionals, doctors and nurses and psychiatrists and counselors and therapists who are there as well. And if the one you care for does not have immediate access to some, maybe you can step in and suggest. Maybe you can talk to a family member of the one you care for, maybe the power of attorney or whomever oversees any big decisions concerning the one that you care for. My point is that you do these things, but you can't do them alone. More help could possibly be needed. And as a caregiver, you don't want to have yourself, your own mental health decline. So you have to keep an eye on yourself as well, because taking care of yourself is taking care of others. I'm going to repeat that. Taking care of yourself is taking care of others. Taking care of yourself is creating physical and social environment. Taking care of yourself is supporting well-being. Taking care of yourself is enabling people to do what is important to them. Taking care of yourself is protecting those that you care for. Learn self-care as a caregiver and know the signs and symptoms of mental health decline in yourself. And you seek help if you need it. Too many caregivers, family caregivers or professional caregivers, think that they are alone in this, but they're not. There are people out there who will step in immediately and give respite. Because the quality of life of everyone, should be the goal. Quality of life. To have quality of life, to have a good quality of life, is to have good mental health, good physical health, good emotional health. And we do that by creating, supporting, enabling, and protecting others and ourselves. If you or someone you know, or even the one you care for, is suffering from mental health decline, please reach out to professionals for assistance. It is vital. Your mental health is so important. I've created a resource on the Carosity website, mental health resource. If you go to carosity.care and click on Resource Center, and then click on the mental health resources, there you'll find links to websites and phone numbers that you can contact and reach out to find assistance with your mental health. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I truly hope it was educational and informative for you. Be well.